They laughed the day she sealed the tunnel. Not quietly, not behind her back, openly, loudly, without restraint. Because to them, it didn't make sense. Nothing about it did. The old railway tunnel had been abandoned for years, just a hollow cut through the mountainside, damp, dark, and forgotten. The tracks still ran through it, rusted but intact, disappearing into shadow on one end and opening to the valley on the other. It wasn't a home. It wasn't even shelter. It was just a place people passed through, quickly, if they had to. But Eleanor Hayes didn't pass through it. She stopped, and then she claimed it. The first change was small. She cleared debris, broken wood, loose stones, old scraps left behind by time and neglect. People noticed, but no one cared. Probably using it for storage, someone said. Or hiding from the wind. Another joked. Then she started building. That's when the laughter began. Eleanor hauled timber to the tunnel's open end and began sealing it, layer by layer, beam by beam, constructing a thick wooden barrier where open air had once flowed freely. Is she boarding it up? Someone asked from the valley. Looks like she's trying to trap herself inside, came the reply. The jokes spread quickly. By the end of the week, people were making trips just to watch. She didn't rush. Every beam was measured. Every gap sealed tight. She built a door into the structure. Thick, reinforced, set deep into the frame. Then she kept going. More layers. More insulation. She packed the walls with earth, straw, and clay, sealing every crack until the entrance became less like a doorway and more like a barrier. A deliberate one. A final one. She's turning it into a tomb, Jonas Hale said, standing with a group of men at the base of the tunnel. The others laughed. Eleanor stood inside the entrance, lantern hanging beside her, hands covered in dust and clay. It'll hold heat, she said calmly. Jonas smirked. Heat? In there. He gestured toward the tunnel behind her, dark, stretching deep into the mountain. That place is colder than the valley, even in summer. Because it's open, Eleanor replied. Air moves through it. It doesn't settle. Jonas stepped closer, peering past her into the tunnel. And sealing it fixes that. Yes. The certainty in her voice made him pause, just for a moment. Then he laughed again. You're trying to turn a cave into a house. I'm turning it into shelter. Jonas shook his head. You've got cabins down in the valley. Real ones. Built properly. Eleanor glanced past him, toward the scattered homes below. Thin walls. Simple structures. Built for the winters they knew. Not the ones she remembered. Those won't hold, she said. Jonas chuckled. They've held every winter so far. Eleanor met his eyes. Not this one. The laughter that followed was louder than before. Because to them, that was the part that made the least sense. Winter had always been manageable here. Cold, yes, but never unforgiving. Never something that demanded more than a good fire and solid walls. Eleanor didn't argue. She turned back to her work and finished sealing the tunnel. When she was done, the entrance looked nothing like it had before. Where open space once stood, there was now a thick, reinforced wall, carefully packed and sealed. The door sat deep within it, heavy and solid. And behind it, darkness, but not emptiness. Inside, Eleanor had transformed the tunnel. She didn't try to change its shape. She used it. The earth surrounding it acted as natural insulation. The deeper you went, the more stable the temperature became. She built her living space further inside, not near the entrance, but deep enough that outside air couldn't reach it easily. She laid out a simple sleeping area, a small stove, storage, everything positioned deliberately, because the tunnel didn't need to fight the cold. It just needed to outlast it. The day she lit her first fire inside, she watched carefully. The heat didn't rush upward and vanish like it did in the valley cabins. It stayed, slowly spreading, absorbed by the surrounding earth. Held. By nightfall, the temperature inside had settled into something steady. Not hot. Not fragile. Constant. Eleanor leaned back against the tunnel wall, feeling the warmth radiate through it. Good. That's exactly what she needed. Down in the valley, life continued as it always had. Cabins stood with their familiar shapes. Fires burned strong. Doors opened and closed without urgency. The tunnel became a joke. A story. She sealed herself underground. People said, "Let's see how long she lasts in there." Eleanor didn't respond. She stayed inside, working, adjusting, preparing, because she knew something they didn't. The first sign came with the wind. It shifted direction. Sharper, colder, Instead of drifting through the valley, it began cutting across it. Eleanor felt it even inside the tunnel, but only faintly, like a distant pressure. Outside, people noticed. But they didn't worry. Just a cold spell, they said. It'll pass. It didn't. The temperature dropped overnight. Fast. Faster than anyone expected. Fires burned earlier. Hotter. But something felt wrong. The heat didn't last. It slipped through walls. To cracks. To the structure itself. Eleanor stood near her stove, watching the steady glow. The warmth inside the tunnel didn't spike. It didn't fade. It stayed. Because the earth held it. Stored it. Protected it. Then the storm came. No warning. No slow build-up. Just wind. Then snow. Then something deeper. A cold that didn't just sit outside. It pushed. Relentless. In the valley, panic spread quickly. Fires roared. Wood vanished. People sealed doors, stuffed cloth into cracks, tried everything they could think of. It didn't work. Because the problem wasn't the fire. It was the exposure. The cold didn't need an opening. It came through everything. Walls froze. Air inside homes turned sharp and biting. Breath hung heavy. Children cried. Men stopped laughing. Inside the tunnel, Eleanor sat quietly. The storm raged outside, but it felt distant. Muted. The earth absorbed it. The sealed entrance blocked it. The warmth inside remained steady. Unshaken. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then, a sound. Faint. A knock. Eleanor opened her eyes. There it was again. Stronger this time. Desperate. She stood and moved toward the entrance, lantern in hand. Unbolted the heavy door. And when she opened it, the storm surged in. And through it, a figure stumbled forward. Jonas Hale. His face pale, his confidence gone, his breath uneven. The cold, he rasped. It's inside the walls, we can't stop it. He looked at her, all pride stripped away. Your tunnel, he said. It's the only place that can hold. He staggered. Please. Eleanor stepped aside without hesitation. Jonas stumbled past her into the tunnel, boots scraping against the wooden threshold before he nearly collapsed just inside. Eleanor shut the heavy door quickly, sealing out the storm in a single, solid motion. The difference was immediate. The wind vanished. The cold retreated. What remained was stillness and warmth. Not the kind that burned fast and faded. Not the kind that depended on constant feeding. This warmth was steady, held, stored in the very walls around them. Jonas stayed on his knees for a moment, breathing hard, his hands shaking as he pressed them against the packed earth wall. His eyes widened. It's warm, he said, disbelief creeping into his voice. Eleanor hung the lantern on a hook, its glow spreading softly across the curved interior. It stays that way, she said. That's the point. Jonas looked around slowly. The tunnel stretched deeper behind her, dimly lit, the air calm and unmoving. No drafts. No biting edge of cold creeping through cracks. How, he asked. Eleanor walked past him, adjusting the small stove. The fire inside was modest, barely more than a steady glow. The earth insulates, she said. Out there, you're fighting the cold. In here, you're separated from it. Jonas swallowed hard. They won't last, he said. We've tried everything. Fires, sealing walls, doubling wood. It's not enough. Eleanor met his eyes. How many? Jonas hesitated only a moment. All of them. The words landed heavily. For a brief second, Eleanor said nothing. Then she moved. She grabbed her coat, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and lifted another lantern. Jonas frowned, struggling to his feet. You can't bring the whole valley in here. No, she said. But I can keep them alive. She opened the door. The storm surged forward again, but Eleanor stepped into it without hesitation. Jonas followed. The wind hit like a physical force. Snow blinded them, swirling violently, erasing distance and direction. The cold was sharper now, deeper. It didn't just sit on the skin, it pressed inward. They reached the first cabin. Eleanor forced the door open. Inside, the cold felt worse. A family huddled together, their fire reduced to weak embers, their movements slow and unfocused. Up, Eleanor said, firm and direct. You're coming with us. No one argued. There wasn't enough strength left for doubt. She worked quickly. Wrap everything you have. Stay together. Follow closely. Jonas helped where he could, guiding them out into the storm. Trip by trip, they moved through the valley. Cabin after cabin. Some people could walk. Some needed to be supported. Some were barely conscious. Eleanor didn't panic. She didn't rush blindly. She kept it controlled. Small groups. Steady movement. Each climb back to the tunnel was harder. The wind resisted them. The snow slowed them. The cold tried to take what little strength remained. But they kept moving. Inside the tunnel, Eleanor organized them immediately. Move deeper, she instructed. Not near the entrance. Stay close to the walls. People followed, too exhausted to question. At first, they didn't understand. Then they felt it. The warmth. Not concentrated in one place, but everywhere. The earth itself held it. The air didn't move. It didn't carry heat away. It stayed. More people came. The tunnel filled. Then filled further. But the warmth didn't break. It didn't thin. It held steady, exactly as Eleanor had intended. Jonas stood back, watching as people who had been on the edge of collapse slowly regained strength. Watching as breathing steadied. As color returned to faces. As fear began to loosen its grip. You built this for this, he said quietly. Eleanor shook her head slightly. I built it because I knew what could happen. Jonas looked around again. The tunnel, the walls, the depth of it all. We built wrong, he said. Eleanor didn't answer. She simply kept moving, checking on people, adjusting positions, keeping everything stable. By the time she made her final trip, the valley had gone silent. No movement. No light. Just snow-covered shapes where homes once stood with confidence. She stood at the edge of the valley for a moment, scanning. Nothing. Then she turned back. The walk to the tunnel felt longer this time. Not from distance. From weight. When she reached the entrance, Jonas opened the door immediately. Inside, the tunnel was full. Dozens of people sat or leaned along the walls, wrapped in blankets, close but not crowded to the point of panic. And they were alive. Warm. Stable. Eleanor stepped in and sealed the door once more. The storm disappeared again. Hours passed. Then more. No one froze. No one slipped away. The small fire burned low, barely needing attention. Because the tunnel itself did most of the work. The earth absorbed the heat, stored it, returned it gradually. By morning, the storm had weakened. The wind faded. The pressure lifted. Eleanor opened the door slowly. Cold air entered, but it was different now. Manageable. Normal. People stepped outside one by one. The valley was buried under snow. Roofs sagged. Doors were sealed shut. Chimneys stood silent. Cabins that had once seemed strong now looked fragile. Temporary. Men stood quietly, taking it in. Then their eyes turned back to the tunnel. No laughter. No doubt. Only understanding. Days later, when the snow began to melt, the valley changed. People returned to their homes, but not to rebuild the same way. They came back to the tunnel. With tools. With questions. How deep does it go, one asked. How did you seal the entrance? Another said. Eleanor showed them. The principles. Not just what she built, but why it worked. Stop fighting the cold directly, she explained. Work with the land. Use what holds steady. They listened. Because this time, they had seen the difference. By the end of winter, the valley no longer looked the same. Some cabins were rebuilt, but thicker, better sealed, partially dug into the ground. Others followed Eleanor's design more closely. Structures built into hillsides, protected by earth instead of exposed to wind. The laughter never returned. At the edge of the valley, the sealed railway tunnel remained exactly as it had been. Quiet. Solid. Unshaken. No longer a curiosity. Now a foundation. Because what Eleanor had built wasn't just shelter. It was understanding. And in that valley, they had all learned something the same way. Not through words, but through survival. The cold doesn't care what's familiar. It doesn't care what's always worked. And when it comes hard enough, only what's built to endure it remains.